That's the 2mm axle. That's a lovely fit on there. Runs very nicely and true, and that'll just have the teeniest spot of Devcon on it to retain it. So that works well. This is one of the rear hubs in the lathe. The old axle was 1.7mm, the new axle's 2mm. So we're just going to open it out a tad, and it wants to open out for a depth of 6mm. So with this lathe it's very easy. It's a matter of lining it up so it's just penetrating, then turning the handle 6 times for 6mm. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now, there's a very little amount of vibration on the drill, which means the hole isn't actually absolutely concentric, which isn't surprising. There's nothing I can do about that because I'm not taking enough meat off of the thing, opening from 1.7 to 2. But that's the axle. Opened out, and the teeniest spot of epoxy in there will retain it nicely. I say the teeniest spot advisedly because we don't want it splurging out everywhere and causing problems. So I carefully only use very small amounts when I'm doing a job like this. Now, yes. Here's the pair to that. So this also just wants popping in and tightening up sufficiently to grip, but not enough to destroy the thing. I'm going slowly because I don't want to melt the thing. So that's just about penetrating there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And interestingly, this hub appears to be running more true than the other one, which is fine. So that's that one. Now, oops, that will go like that, and that will run, very nicely in between the frames, and then tyres can go on. You did see me leave the chuck keys in the chuck earlier. Of course one shouldn't do that, bad practice, I'm not sure for that. I have to say operating a lathe at arm's length is very difficult, but that's me just trying to leave a view for the camera. Obviously, normally I take it with more care and respect. Just a progress report following last night's filling the wheels with milliput. I've just finished throwing that one on the floor. I'll find it later. Here's the other one. This is the front hub, one of the front hubs, and where I filled it flush with milliput, I first of all drilled it as deep as I dare, having carefully measured the thickness of the thing as deep as I dare, 4 mm, which is the major diameter of the bearing. And then, because, as already mentioned, the kingpin needs to go as far into the hub as possible, I've then countersunk, or in this instance bored out, the top surface of the milliput by 2 mils. So actually the bearing sits with its shoulder on the milliput there, and the main bearing, beg your pardon, the main bearing sits in that smaller recess, and that'll give quite a nice characteristic to the main hub. And I've done a pair of those. Really didn't take very long. One has to be fairly careful with measuring, because the last thing you want to do is have the drill burst out that side, which it hasn't. So we are careful of that, but perfectly possible to do. Vernier calipers to measure the primary thickness, which is about 6 mil, and this is bored out 4.74 mil, thereabouts, nearly 5 mil. So so there's a little bit of meat left in the plastic still, but it does get the bearing cosily down there. And of course that's the type of bearing we're talking about, and it turns over and it just sits in there very neatly. It's a nice cosy fit, so I won't poke it in now, but that's what's going to happen with that. I've also given the chassis a blow over with Halford's black, and then taken a bit off the steps to give a bit of wear, if you see what I mean. And I've fitted the rear axle. So axle and the 2 rear hubs. The glue's drying at the moment. Having not forgotten to put the slimmed down bevel gear on. So that'll be fine. And then, of course, the motor later on will neatly slip in there and mesh like that, and that'll do a nice neat job. When you're doing things like gluing hubs onto axles like this, if you simply well, first of all, you want to put the glue in the hub, in the wheel, not on the axle, because if you put it on the axle and you push the wheel on, the action of pushing the wheel on will push the glue down the axle into bits like the chassis there that you really don't want to glue. Half the secret of gluing is, if you like, controlling where it's going. So therefore you put the glue in the wheel hub and then push it on. The other thing is, of course, unless you do something about it, there's air in the wheel hub as well as glue, and so you push it on, push it down hard, and then it starts coming straight back off again because you've compressed the air inside, and it'll push it back off like a spring. So what you really need to do is get a very, very fine drill and put a hole, a small hole, and it only need be the tiniest hole you can, all the way through. And in fact, you may or might not be able to see, there is a pinprick hole just at the end there, and that's a bleed hole for the main axle hole, so that when I push the thing on with the glue, the air will escape and I can push it fully home and it doesn't do its silliness and start popping back off again. And I've done that on both. Very easy to do, as long as you remember to do it. So as I say, there's the rear axle ready to have its tyres put back on. I will, at the moment, the bevel gear is just pushed on. In practice, it'd probably be sufficient, but in fact, once everything else is dry, I will put a teeny bit of Devcon adhesive on that just to help keep it in place. But if you like, that bit there is the drive. It is as simple as that. When you're meshing the motor, the trick is to look. You probably can't see this on camera, but you look down in line with the motor, and the axle should neatly obscure the shaft of the motor. You can very easily see if the motor is too low or too high or pointing in the right direction. So you do, if you like, a line of sight when you actually come to fit the motor to make sure it's meshing nicely. And later on, of course, I will bed that in milliput, and that'll keep it lovely and secure. And I'll make sure it doesn't come up too high, nor indeed sit down too low. And that's the, if you like, the first stage of motorising one of these chassis.